Hello, well, welcome to the online lecture again. This time we'll talk about the immune and lymphatic system. Theoretically, these two are the two separate systems, but we tend to group them together because they have very similar functions. Lymphatic system consists of vessels and organ, lymphatic vessels and lymphatic organ. Lymphatic vessels is very similar to blood vessels in that they have valve. They also transport fluid. The fluid that lymphatic vessels transport, they are called lymph. But the fluid that the blood vessels transport, of course, they call blood. Similar to the blood vessels, vein, specific vein. Both vein and lymphatic vessels, they have valve, one-way valve. And we'll talk about lymphatic organ later. They are connected with the vessels. There are three functions for the lymphatic system. One is that it returns excess tissue fluid to the bloodstream. Where is the tissue fluid? They are located in those tissue fluid is called interstitial fluid. So they're called interstitial fluid. So they are the fluid bathing all the cells in our body. They are not blood per se, but another function of the lymphatic system is that they absorb fat in the digestive tract. Remember when I talk about digestive system, in the small intestine we have the microvilli, we have the villi and microvilli. And then in the villi we have lacteal and capillaries. Lacteals, I told you that it is for absorption of fat, and then the lacteal will eventually become a lymphatic vessel. So this is what it means in here. It absorbs fat, and also lymphatic system major function is to defend the body from diseases. It has the immune response. And lymphatic vessel, as I told you, that it is a one-way system. The reason is that they have one-way valve. In the later slides, I will show you the one-way valve in one of the pictures. And then lymphatic capillaries, found in most area of the body. They are closed-ended vessels. Unlike our cardiovascular system, blood vessels, there's no closed end. It's all connected. It's the circulatory. And then the capillary will merge in a larger vessel. It's just like our cardiovascular systems. And then the larger vessel will carry the lymph into thoracic and lymphatic ducts. We'll talk about those later. And then the lymphatic capillary is for absorption of excess fluid. You can imagine that the lymphatic capillary, they are like the hair root or the root of hair. If you take the biofibula, you look at the onion hair root. So the lymphatic capillary is like the hair root of plants. Hair root of plant, they are responsible for absorption of water and nutrient. Here, lymphatic capillary is similar. They absorb excess interstitial fluid. Can be water and solute, like electrolyte, or even oxygen. Hormone and enzyme, or waste that's secreted, also can be absorbed by these lymphatic capillaries. So after the lymphatic capillary absorb all this fluid, we call them lymph. Lymph is the fluid that is being transported in the lymphatic system. And then, as I told you, the lymphatic capillary is the smallest diameter of the in the lymphatic system, and then when it gets bigger, we call it lymphatic vessels. And then when lymphatic vessels merge and becomes even bigger, we call it lymphatic ducts. We have two types of lymphatic ducts. One is called thoracic duct. Thoracic duct, basically, it is on our left side. So thoracic duct collect all the lymphatic vessels from the left side of the body, and then ultimately it connects to the left subclavian vein. Subclavian, sub means under, clavian means clavicle. Clavicle, they are the so-called collarbones here, the two horizontal, the collarbones here, the two bones here, you can feel it by touching your shoulder here. These are called clavicle. That means the vein here is under the clavicle. So, in other words, the lymphatic system connects to our cardiovascular system at the subclavian vein. The right side is called right lymphatic duct. As the name suggested, this lymphatic duct collect all the lymphatic vessels from the right side to become this right lymphatic duct, and then this right lymphatic duct also connects to the right subclavian vein, connects to the cardiovascular system through this right subclavian vein. So the left side is called thoracic duct, the right side is called right lymphatic duct. So it's a schematic diagram here to show us that tonsil. We have lymphatic vessels, so you see there's a subclavian vein, they are here, and then a tonsil is one of the lymphatic organs, and then thymus is another one. Spleen, we'll talk about thymus and spleen later, and then we have all these nodes, axillary nodes, and then inguinal lymph nodes. These are the example of lymph nodes. And then thoracic duct, and on the left side, and then do we have the right lymphatic duct here. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there's one-way valve prevent the lymph from backflow similar to the vein in our cardiovascular system. And then also similar to the vein, the movement of the lymph in the lymphatic system also depends on the contraction of the skeletal muscle. It is just like the vein, that the blood going through the vein also depends on the contraction and relaxation of the skeletal muscle. Edema is basically a swelling of the local tissue by accumulation of fluid in the tissues. So it can be many different reasons, but based on what we're talking about in here, you may have a tumor, lymphoid tumor that can block the circulation of your lymph, and then in this case, then you have accumulation of the fluid, then you can have edema. Or you can have a parasite growing in your lymphatic system. And then the parasite may block the flow of the lymph in your lymphatic system, and in this case you can also have edema. We call this elephantitis. And then, so here is what I meant. The lymphatic capillaries, it has the end, closed end. The closed end of the lymphatic capillary, they act like a hair root. It is where the closed end of the lymphatic capillary that can absorb the excess tissue fluid or interstitial fluid. And then you can see that here, the lymphatic vessels, they have one-way valve, just like the vein. And this is the lymph nodes. We'll talk about lymph nodes later. So lymphatic organs, those are the organs that has a lot of lymphocytes. Lymphocytes, they are specialized white blood cell involved in adaptive immunity. We'll talk about adaptive immunity later in today's lecture. We have two types of lymphoid organ. One is a primary, the other one is secondary. The primary one is very simple. It's only a red bone marrow and thymus. Only these two you need to memorize. And then we call it primary because they are the location where the lymphocytes develop and mature. They make the lymphocyte. Secondary, we have more than just these two, spleen and lymph node. Actually, we have a lot of different lymph nodes, but we just generalize it as lymph nodes so that you don't need to memorize all the specific lymph nodes. You just need to memorize, okay, spleen and lymph nodes. Spleen is actually, people call it the largest lymphoid organ. It's the largest lymphoid organ. It is where the lymphocytes become activated. So remember red bone marrow and thymus, they are the primary, and thymus is the primary, and then lymph nodes and the spleen is the secondary. Red bone marrow, they have a lot of connective tissue and stem cells. Because they have stem cells, that's why they can make lymphocyte. And also another function of red bone marrow is to make erythrocyte. And of course, stem cell can also make a white blood cell, which is white blood cell is like a big category. Lymphocyte is one type of white blood cell. And then sinuses. Okay, we have two types of lymphocyte. We will talk a lot about B cell and T cell today. So B cell, they are made and mature in bone marrow. T cell, they were also made from bone marrow, but they mature or reach thymus. So you can remember this. B stands for bone marrow because they are made and mature in bone marrow. T, you may call it thymus because T cell, they are made in bone marrow, but they mature in thymus. So T go with T. Thymus is another primary lymphoid organs. It is in between trachea and sternum. Sternum is basically your chest bone or your breastbone here. And it is where the T cell maturate. And so if T cells are made and then they are not, they are malfunction. Malfunction meaning that if they are attacking our body's cell, so if some T cell they malfunction, they attack our own body cell, then they will go for apoptosis. That means the cell will die in thymus. So it is the place that they mature, and if they malfunction, it is also the place where they will die. The lymphoid cell, all these lymphocytes, all these immune cells, they must be able to distinguish cell from non-cell. Otherwise, you will have different type of autoimmune diseases that we will talk at the end of today's lecture. So lymphocytes migrate from blood into the secondary lymphoid organ, and then they may encounter foreign molecule or cells. So those are the invader or microbes that we want to get rid of because they usually cause illnesses in human body. And they in the secondary lymphatic organ like lymph nodes, the lymphocyte can proliferate and become activated. So they will be they will be fighting against the infection in the, let's say, lymph nodes. So actually they will go into blood, and then they will search for infection and they will cause inflammation. They will infect. So those activated lymphocytes, after they leave the lymph node, then they will actively look for infection, meaning that the location of the foreign molecule or cells, the invader, and also the inflammation. They also cause inflammation. Spleen, as I told you, is the largest lymphoid organ, and then it is located upper left side of your abdominal cavity. So it is located next to your stomach, and then it has two parts: red pulp and white pulp. In the spleen, the red pulp is where the macrophages, they are the what type of white blood cell that they can engulf foreign cell to eat them. So red pulp is to remove old or defective blood cells. As a reminder, red blood cell or erythrocyte, they have a lifespan of 120 days. So after 120 days, the red blood cell will be broken down by spleen here in the red pulp, and also by liver as well. And then white pulp, they are the lymphatic tissues where the lymphocyte also fight the war, fight the immune war with the foreign invaders. Lymph nodes is another type of secondary lymphatic organs. They are small oval structures located along the lymphatic vessels. They are also connective tissue, divides organ into nodule and sinuses. So each nodule, they are packed with B cells and T cells. And macrophages, a form of white blood cell, they engulf a pathogen. So they actually eat them. It's just like amoeba eating paramecium. So macrophages, we have two types, neutrophils and monophils. Neutrophils and monocytes. So we'll talk about these two later. And then virus, bacteria, they are removed in the lymph. So a little bit about lymph nodes. How many of you have very severe high temperature fever before? Well, for me, I had this experience. I had a very high temperature fever one night, and then I noticed that something popped up from my neck. When I press it, it is soft, but it rebounds back. And then later on, like 1 or 2 days later, I went to see doctors, and I asked the doctor that what happened to the neck. And then he looked at it, and then he also pressed it. He said, "You mean this?" He pressed it, and then I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about this." So it turns out that my lymph node in the neck, they actually swells because there's lots of war fighting in the lymph nodes, and that's why lots of dead viruses, bacteria, or I don't know what's that, and then also dead lymphocyte, dead white blood cell, they accumulated in the lymph node of my neck. That's why the lymph node swells. So lymphatic system, they work with immune system. That's why we group the two systems together when we talk about them. Both immune system is to protect body from pathogen, toxin, and other invader. Immune system also kill cancer cells. This is very important. Yeah, if you have a strong immune system, it actually protects you from cancer. they have an innate. We have two types of immunity: innate and adaptive. Innate are the mechanism that without previous exposure to unwanted substances. For example, fever, sneezing, running nose, coughing. All these are called innate immunity. That means your normal cold or flu symptoms. Normal flu symptoms, they are the innate immunity. Adaptive immunity depends on the previous exposure. For example, their expression of antibody. Expression of antibody to fight against infection, that is adaptive immunity. So I'll talk about briefly why when we get a flu, we'll have all kinds of symptoms. It makes us sick. That is the innate immunity. So we have four types of the innate immunity: physical and chemical barrier, inflammation, phagocyte, and natural killer cell, and protective proteins. So skin and mucous membrane in the respiratory, digestive, and urinary tract, they provide a mechanical barrier. Upper respiratory tract has cilia to remove trapped particle or pathogens or bacteria and stuff. Skin can secrete oil that can weaken or even kill bacteria. Stomach is acidic, that can kill a lot of bacteria. And we have a lot of normal bacteria like E. coli in the intestine. And those normal healthy bacteria, they outcompete the pathogen, so that the pathogen cannot grow in our intestine. So remember, I told you the coughing and sneezing, they are due to the mucous membrane in the respiratory tract and also the cilia in the upper respiratory tract. Those causes coughing and sneezing. Running nose is the same. Running nose, we have capillary dilated in our nasal cavity, and then more fluid will be drained from the capillary into our nasal cavity, so that the fluid can rinse out the viruses in our nose, and that's how we have running nose. Inflammatory responses. What happened is that we have redness and swelling. Why is that? The changes in the capillary is usually vasodilation. When the blood vessels dilate, what happens is that you will increase the fluid going from the blood vessels into the body tissue at that local area. When your blood vessels dilate, more fluid will go from your blood vessels into the body tissues, so that the body tissue will have excess fluid, aka it may have swelling occur. Redness is caused by the vasodilation, increasing the diameter of the blood vessels, so that you will look red over that area. Heat, because you have more blood going into that area, that's why you feel heat. Pain, because you have a swelling of the tissue, local body tissue, that will stimulate the free nerve ending of the there. Then you will send a pain signal to your brain. So increasing the diameter of the blood vessels over there will help to fight off the infection, because when you have more blood going into that area, you will have more white blood cell going into that area as well. And also, when you have excess fluid coming from your blood vessels into that tissue, that tissue area, the excess fluid can also rinse out the infection. So you have different cell type that causes the inflammatory responses. Mast cell is the major one because they secrete a histamine. Histamine is the one that causes capillaries to dilate. So remember, mast cells secrete histamine. Histamine causes vasodilation, and vasodilation is the direct causes for inflammatory responses. And we take antihistamine to control or suppress our allergic responses. It is because of this reason. When we have antihistamine, that means a drug that can inhibit histamine, then it will stop the capillary from dilation. Then it will help to stop our allergic reaction. Macrophages and dendritic cells, they are the phagocytic cell. So this one, macrophages are phagocytic, and dendritic cell, they release cytokine. Cytokine, remember, they are the chemical signal, they're chemical messenger that can tell other immune cell what to do. So it's the chemical message. It's like a neurotransmitter. It's like neurotransmitter for the immune cell, for the immune system. Cytokine is like you can call it neurotransmitter for the immune system. But remember, cytokine, they are the chemical messenger secreted by one immune cell to communicate with another immune cell, to let them know what to do. So we have injured tissue cell, and then mast cell will start to secrete histamine. Mast cell is basically, you can find mast cell in almost everywhere. And then when histamine is being secreted, then you have a vasodilation, and then you increase blood flow. And then you have macrophages and dendritic cell. Macrophages to start eating the pathogen, and then dendritic cells start to release a cytokine, and the cytokine messenger have many different functions. It can tell other immune cells what to do, or it can also cause further inflammatory reaction. And then we have here neutrophils and monocytes. Okay, neutrophil. No E. So neutrophils and monocytes, they are the macrophages. Because the blood vessels dilate, then you have more white blood cell can go in here. And the neutrophils and macrophages, they will they will squeeze through the blood vessels, the capillary, and then go into the tissue to start eating all the pathogens. One of the reasons they will do that because of the cytokine molecule. The cytokine molecule will actually tell the neutrophil and monocyte to go to that area. It's like an alarm signal telling we need more macrophages here to eat the pathogens. And then if the blood vessel is damaged, then you will have blood clotting occur, like the platelet cell and fibrin, to stop the bleeding. And then, because we have the dilated blood vessel vasodilation, it allows more blood, more white blood cell, more phagocyte to go into that area. So after the macrophages engulf a pathogen, it forms something called endocytic vesicle. So basically, they form a vesicle to trap that pathogen inside the cell, inside the cytoplasm of the macrophage. And then that vesicle will fill with lysosomes. Remember lysosomes, we learned it at the beginning of the semester in the cell structure and function lecture, online lecture. Lysosome contains digestive enzymes. So you trap the pathogen in a vesicle inside the cytoplasm of a white blood cell, and then it will merge with a lysosome that has digestive enzyme, meaning that it's like you are poisoning your prisoners. When you poison the prisoners, of course, you can kill the pathogen trapped inside these endocytic vesicles. We have two types of macrophages. Neutrophils. Neutrophils, they They are the first that arrive in the infected area, and they form pus. Monocytes, they migrate from the blood, and then they become macrophages as well. And we have, other than macrophages, we also have natural killer cells. Natural killer cells, they have large granule. So when you look at the cell under the microscope, you see lots of dot inside the cell. We call it granule. And then they can kill cancer cells. They can also kill infected body cells. If some of your body cells they are infected, they will also kill the body cell as well. They can tell whether the cell belongs to the foreign invader, the virus or bacteria or the microbes, or it belongs to us by this MHC1, major histocompatibility class 1 molecule. So based on this molecule, then they can tell whether or not the cell is self or foreign. The reason is that for cancer cell or virus-infected cell, that means our own body cell, they do not express this MHC, major histocompatibility class 1 molecule. It's like your student ID. Your West LA College student ID. So if you have this student ID, when the campus police, when you show it to the campus police, then they know that, okay, you are our student, then they won't do anything to you. But if you don't have the student ID, then the campus police may escort you to leave the campus. So this MHC1 is like your student ID. But for the natural killer cell, they cannot recognize other antigens. They cannot recognize antigens. And then we have protective proteins. So for the protective protein, for example, there's some kind of, it is an innate immune response. Complement. Complement is a form of protein that they always start with letter C and a number. So what do? This complement protein, they can bind to mast cell and tell the mast cell to secrete a histamine, or they can attract phagocytes to bind to the pathogen. So since there are lots of different complement protein, they have different functions. These are just only two of the functions. Actually, complement, they can drill hole. They can actually insert into the cell membrane of the bacteria or virus, and then they can form. They can actually, because you can insert several complement together, and then it's actually making a gigantic pore on the surface of the bacteria. In this case, the cell membrane of the bacteria become leaky, so that the cytoplasm can leak out from the cell, or anything can go into the bacteria cell to cause the cell die. Oh yeah, this is what I meant in here. So complement, you have this complement protein that can insert into the cell membrane of a bacteria, and then it can form a pore. The pore, we call it membrane attack complex, MAC. So this membrane attack complex is basically a gigantic pore on the cell membrane of the bacteria, and then things will be, so fluid can go in, or fluid can also come out. It depends on the concentration differences. If fluid goes in, it will eventually cause the cell to lysis, burst, and it will kill the bacteria in this case. So you may consider the complement, or this membrane attack complex. Complement is like a bullet that you shoot into the bacterial cell, and when you shoot bullet into a bacterial cell, of course, you will start to bleed, and then you can bleed the cell to death. And then interferon is very interesting. It applies to many cases. We will go back to interferon later in today's lecture. If we have protein produced, it's a protein produced by infected cells to tell other non-infected cells. What it means is that if some of our body cells get infected, and then they will start secreting this interferon protein, and this interferon protein will tell other healthy cells that have not been infected to tell them that, okay, we have foreign invader, okay. And then when they receive this interferon, when the healthy cell receives the interferon, they can start making antibody or other defense molecule or the other protective protein in their cell, so that when the virus or bacteria infect those healthy cells, then they are already equipped with the protective protein to kill the bacteria or viruses. So interferon is also a signaling molecule, but it carries specific information of that infectious agent. So that other healthy cell can, based on that information, to form, to make those protective protein to defend themselves. Adaptive immunity occurs when. So we finished talking about the innate immunity. Now we talk about adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity is specific. We'll tell you why. So when our innate defense fails to prevent infection, so what happens is that all the previous mechanisms, like protective proteins, inflammation, and mucous membrane and stuff, if they're not able to get rid of the infection, then we will start using adaptive immunity. It is based on antigens. Antigens, they are the molecule that stimulate the immune response. It is also allow our body to tell the difference between self or non-self. Usually it takes 5 to 7 days to become fully activated and may last for years. What does it mean? So, give you a very common example that we face every year. So if you get a flu or cold, usually at first you may not get any symptoms because the flu virus, they are still multiplying in your body, and then after maybe 1 or 2 days, then you will start getting the innate immune response. That means coughing, sneezing, so on and so forth. And then if your innate immune responses cannot get rid of the flu viruses, and then after 5 to 7 days, then your adaptive immunity will kick in. They will try to secrete a specific antibody to kill that specific flu viruses. After your immune system are able to recognize the flu virus and then tailor-make the antibody, then your immune system has the immune memory. The immune memory will last for years, almost a lifetime, almost a life. It's many years. Okay, it's almost a lifelong. So we'll talk about the memory cells later. So adaptive defenses depends on B cells and T cells. We'll talk about those. The reason is that they have antigen receptor. B cell and T cell, they have antigen receptor that can recognize specific antigens. Each lymphocyte don't have one type of receptor. Therefore, we have a lot of different types of B cell and T cell. Each B cells and each type of B cells or T cells, they have one specific antigen receptor. So let's take a look. Let's start with the second video.